Best. Gotta make sure our audio is good because it's really hard to say. I don't have certain tests in place anymore. Devices, that is, that I'd use for testing. So I'm just gonna have to have an echo for a second. Oh yeah, that's fine. Okay. All right then, y'all. So we've been slacking, we've been behind. We've been needing to finish up reading Ophiel. Speaking of Ophiel, just the other night, we need to finish this book up. So that's what we're gonna do. We're not gonna finish the whole thing right now, but we're gonna at least read some of it because I definitely want to get this finished up. So let me know. Check. Let me know in the chat if you don't mind. If as long as you can hear everything coming through. If you can hear the music in the background. I'm pretty sure I already checked on my audio and my voice. That should be good. So we're gonna go ahead and bust this boy open. Where were we at last time? We had gone through that foreword and the first chapter, learning the purpose of talismans, which was to harmonize ourselves with these certain energies. Come on, buddy. Cooperate with me. There we go. Okay. So now we're going to probably I'm going to try to do at least one or two chapters. I do have a high level Illuminati meeting early this afternoon. But other than that, we're good to get this cracking. So be sure to hit a like, a share, a subscribe. You know the drill. And be sure to go look in the mirror and tell yourself thank you for all the hard work you've been putting in. Because this game here, this game of life, it's not easy, man. Okay, so we'll get right into it. Ophiel's Art and Practice of Talismanic Magic. So this is going to be Chapter 2, Talismans and the Astral Light. Today, the subject of talismans is greatly unknown and misunderstood. Generally, a talisman is supposed to be an object of some certain kind, and constructed or consecrated or magnetized in a certain magical way, so that the possession and invoking of the talisman will bring a stream of desired effects into the life of the owner of the magical instrument. The above is true, but what is not known is the why and the how of the talisman, upon what system of powers its creation is based, how it works and why it works, how to practice the art of making talismans, and who teaches the art of making talismans. I am forced to say that I am the only teacher that I know of who has the basic view/knowledge of talismans, what they are, and how they should be made and charged. If you know of another, then please write to me with the information and I will check them out. I got one for you right now. Israel Regardi. I got another one for you right now. Cornelius Agrippa. Anyway, I wish I could have gotten the knowledge in this book by just reading about it and not have had to research/study to get it as hard as I did. I do not intend here to give a history of talismans, but some review is necessary. It seems almost as far back as history goes, even to the very early caveman, that mankind was connected to magic operations and to magic pictures, designs, and objects, which clearly were talismans. Welcome. If you're just popping in, please hit that like button. Say what's up in the chat. The very earliest of men, the cavemen, drew/painted pictures on the sides of caves which pictures were connected with their hunting operations. Some of these operations regarding food supply must have been successful because mankind did survive. We are here. And how? Coming on down, way down to modern times, we find Indians in this country and people in Africa and the South Seas, etc., having objects around upon which they centered their attention, and from this attention, centered on these objects. These savages expected some returns of some kind. Also, be it noted here that large idols or graven images in pagan temples were, in reality, large talismans. A talisman does not have to be necessarily a small article. In fact, a talisman can be almost anything, as I will try to show later. Pink Kira Stogie, welcome. Welcome. It's good to have you here. I do not know what went on in the minds of these peoples, nor do I know what mental processes went on in the minds of the medieval alchemists and the magic workers of the Middle Ages in regard to their ideas as to how a dead talisman object became a living talisman object capable of doing some work. Like most of the occult, then, or as you might say, all of the occult, then, it appears to me, due to lack of any inside explanation on their part in any of their books, that their talisman creation work was done empirically, without any clear basic idea of what and why they were doing what, and why they were doing what they were doing when they made and consecrated or charged a talisman object. The only idea I can get up on this old work from older times is that these people were close to nature and natural forces, and hence close to their subconscious minds, which subconscious minds are connected to the universal subconscious mind of all, or whatever name you choose to give it. Right? Some people call it God, some people call it Allah. There's all kinds of things to call. Some people call it source, modern day. I don't know. People say all kinds of stuff. Whatever. Call it what you like. And hence, these talisman makers of old times evidently performed the charging ceremonies correctly, especially when, as Dion Fortune said, any act performed with intention becomes a rite or a ritual. Please bear with me if I seem to go astray from talismans so far in talking about the past, etc., but I wish to teach you all about talismans and not just give you some garbled up directions to make talismans that might or might not work satisfactorily. Oh, hey, what up? Welcome in, everybody. Be sure to hit that like button as you're coming in. Of course, if you like this content, if you like magic and occult information, if not, then you know, just chill out and see if maybe you do. Honey Brown, welcome. I forget the other name. Ashley, that's the one, huh? Fellow Tolkien fan. Yeah, no worries. That's fine. Thanks for popping in for a second. And I'm definitely gonna do that book of the law. I don't want to keep certain things like unfinished. So I'd rather finish this up. And then I'm planning to do Book of the Law, and I'm probably going to do a couple other of Crowley's like smaller pamphlets, some of his instructional stuff. But thank you so much for popping in for now. I hope you have a great day. I now want to tell you that the making of talismans is an art which you can learn. But what is most important, you can understand the how and why, and that the how and why goes on over into all occult work, even if you have occasion to make only a few talismans a year. So, dear students, in learning, digesting the contents of this book, you are learning a great deal of occult that is used in all ways. One more point. The basic occult mechanism involved here can be studied in three parts. One, the action starting movement is mind, mental, metaphysics. Everything is done through metaphysical means. 2. Everything, all, is based on a system pattern called the Kabbalah Tree of Life pattern. Whoop. WT, welcome. Great to see you. I hope all is well for you. 3rd, and greatest of them all, the astral light. It is my intention to deal with each of these 3 parts separately. And for anybody who's unfamiliar with like the Kabbalah, that is the map of consciousness that most operative magicians use. Ophiel wrote a book, The Art and Practice of Kabbalah Magic, which you can find over on our dear friend Travis Magus's channel, as well as some other book studies on Kabbalah. Anyway, as I have said before, I am not writing glorious literature to go down forever in history as great writings of a great author. No, I am writing / teaching an obtuse, tricky subject that is far out of the normal square, beaten path, and also a subject that is both revealing and concealing. Oh boy, yeah, it is. Therefore, I repeat myself much and many times in this book and all throughout all of his books. He definitely does, and it's just kind of that's just kind of the name of the game, you know. Oh, come on there, buddy. There we go. Can you guys hear that music in the back? If anybody doesn't mind, let me know in the chat. Repeating is unforgivable in fiction literature. Jack London, in almost every story he wrote, referred to the noon whistle blowing in the brickyard in the town of Glen Ellen. His ranch was located nearby. Man, you're really giving me a grief. Not for long, though. I know you're just about to stop. All right, then. But my repeating is not of the same type. No, indeed. If you have read my other books, and I do not mean to hustle you to buy books, I wish I could give them away. And oh, to digress real quick, there's a wonderful website which I just heard him jumped on this live. Usually in advance I like link. There's a Ophiel.art, and on there is pretty much everything he wrote. All the little pamphlets to his students as well as his main books are on there for free. What a guy. So you should begin to be grasping the idea by now that there is some kind of a mechanical first cause behind it all. And this first cause is single. Therefore, all is this one single thing that becomes the many. And that's exactly what Kabbalah teaches us, is that the zero comes into one and then comes into many. That is the reason for these repetitions. I have to teach the existence of countless different subjects / things that all spring from one single substance, at least in the beginning of a new book. I have to do some repeating on the foundations each time, and this talisman book is no exception. Dion Fortune, in one of her books, refers to something called the machinery of the universe. There is such a thing, and it is through this universe machinery that talismans are charged by their being connected with the power of the machinery. And it is because of this connection that talismans can do work. And then she makes some connection with the machinery of the universe, with the moon, or as she calls it, Yesod. I have mentioned before that the moon is the final connection point between the physical cosmos, astrological forces, and this earth plane. Yeah, one thing I've been really like tripping on a lot, to digress again real quick, is our earth plane being referred to as the sublunar realm, because sub implies kind of like lesser, you know what I mean? Subhuman. So for us to be the sublunar, that kind of implies that wouldn't that kind of imply that the lunar realm is greater or has maybe a higher priority? I don't know. Like I said, that's something I've been thinking on a lot. All right, quick drink and let's keep moving. These astrological forces, inner plane forces, referred to in my books, are sort of gathered together, collected, and then funneled down, or as you might say, dumped upon this physical plane. Excuse me. If you're just coming in, welcome in. Please hit that like button. That action is, I repeat, done through the agency of the moon. I can't find anywhere in the books where those ancient people that practiced this magical art had any ideas about this sort of force mechanism of the universe. If you, come on, Ophiel, if you examined all things physical very closely, you will find undisputed evidence that something, some process like this exists and is behind it all. We can therefore work upon this idea and call it a theory. A theory is a very useful thing to use when you don't know exactly what you are doing, but you have a few ideas. We will start learning about the actual machinery of the universe. Everything in the physical cosmos, that is, our physical cosmos. I am not here speaking of any spiritual or pre physical creation. Moves and acts, lives and exists, and grows and shrinks, and moves sideways and backwards and upside down and functions through one agency. And that agency is the astral light. I am going to attempt to give you a lot of information about the astral light and the nature of the astral light and whatever I can think of that belongs to the understanding of it. He did that also in his book, Art and Practice of Astral Projection. He really went into some good information about the astral light in that book as well. So if you haven't checked that one out, definitely do. But man, I'm excited to see what he's got to say about it here. It is my intention in this book to explain this connection clearly rather than just give you a set of directions for whipping out a bunch of talismans which are said to be good for this and that and copied from some thousand times duplicated so-called grimorium purportedly written up by the mythical Solomon and giving you no idea whatever as to the why of the whole matter. In passing, I will also say that all these books giving out magical formulas and diagrams are mostly fakes, in a sense. Even when genuine, they were only intended as guides slash illustrations. All right, you gonna hold? Okay, nice. Welcome in, welcome in. All right, see you later. Each talisman and each magical operation is a personal, individual matter and must be set up and originated personally by you and you alone, for you. There is no such thing as an assembly line standard pattern of magical operations, nor a Hallmark greeting card type of talisman. All are different, and the difference is you and your personal ideas and personal forces. Be this as it may, and in spite of all the different types of different ways the talismans are made and then charged, the power to which they are attached consists of, as said before, the machinery of the physical universe. This machinery is in two words underlying all power behind all things, of which the physical universe consists. Hmm. Hmm. In my earlier books, I did not mention or deal too much with the astrolight concept, as its function was not too clear to me then. But it has been coming through stronger in these later years until much that was obscure and mysterious has since become more lucid. For example, at the beginning of my teaching slash books slash appearances, I was ignorant of the existence of this great force because it was called a variety of names, all different from each other, and so different that no name gave a clue to the other. It seems that the reason for this duplicating of names was that each genuine leader of a religion or occult movement would contact the inner planes and inner forces for himself or herself and discover the existence of this great magical agent, one of its many names, and discover this great magical agent operating in a plane sympathetic to the nature of the discoverer. Hence, this discoverer, thinking also that this discovery was singularly unique to him alone, would bestow an appropriate to him or her name on this great magical agent. Eliphas Levi's name. Oh, okay, so the great magical agent was the one Eliphas Levi called it, without even bothering to check his discovery against previous discoveries and previous names of others for these discoveries. I intend to write, the first cause willing, a complete digression on this great and terrific subject of the astral light. And I would have by now, but more knowledge is coming through all the time. And now at this writing, I am wondering if I will get it all or enough to call all for now. I will speak of the astral light again and again and again because, as in the case of talismans and all other magical work, everything is done through the transforming power of the astral light. Truly, the power machinery of the universe. Your whole occult future work depends on how thoroughly and how much you master this astral light knowledge, and you can't get enough. In the case of this book, we are going to apply this knowledge to the creation of talismans, which could be defined as a specialized application of inner plane cosmic knowledge to special purposes. There was a man by the name of Eliphas Levi who lived and wrote from 1851 to 1875. He purportedly practiced magic slash occult and also wrote and taught. He wrote several books on magic and the occult, which, in line with all occult and magic books in those days and today too, were masterpieces in the art of saying as little as possible and making it sound like something. Boy, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Holy heck. This achievement was like the just TikTok or these reels, everybody's little cute little reels of magic stuff is just such a prime example of that. Like you've said a whole bunch of stuff, but you really haven't said anything. You know what I mean? You just think it sounds good, it sounds convincing for people who don't know any better, but whatever. I'm not going to get too off on all that. This achievement was accomplished by leaving out huge portions of connecting informative material. Well, one other thing I am going to say is that a lot of these things were written under certain oaths, and that's one difference with Ophiel is he wasn't under some of these oaths that certain people take within these groups. So a prime example of that is Eliphas Levi is the reason that we have mapped the tarot onto the paths of the tree of life, right? But he also famously has the fool as the Hebrew letter sheen, where Crowley, Golden Dawn, all these other people have Aleph for the letter sheen, and a lot of people theorize that that was because he was doing that as a kind of blind, not to screw people up, but to still be faithful to his oath, but also one of those things that should have at least been obvious to anyone who was an initiate, you know what I mean? To where you would see that, oh, this is still a letter that indicates spirit, and then I don't know, you'd be able to shuffle it accordingly, you know what I mean? But then again, that's just a theory, that's never really been confirmed. Although that's something very important to keep in mind, is that a lot of those writers were and these blinds that people get upset about, like, oh, I don't really understand why you would do that. That's exactly why you would do that, is because you're trying to be faithful to your oaths while still trying to be faithful to the race of man and putting out all the information you can without breaking these oaths. You know what I mean? All right, that's my little spiel on that. And here we go. I can't make out much. I can't make much out of his writings, and neither can anyone else, because he is doing that blind writing again, like so many of them did. He probably had some other kind of separate verbal instructions that he gave to his students. Yeah, because that's the other thing, is that has largely historically been an oral tradition, mouth to ear. So many things just weren't even written down. Okay, students, or he had some other kind of instructions that they knew about, or else they already knew certain basics. But just reading his writings and reading the writings of any of those writers, you run into a veritable quicksand slash morass of blind ends. These blind ends don't explain anything. As far as I know, if you don't mind my saying so, I'm about the only one who has connected up some of these loose ends. If I was a faker, I would say that I had connected all of them, but I did not connect up all of them. I connected only a few of them. But the ones I did connect do make some sense that you can use. The missing part of these instructions by Eliphas Levi and these other teachers is the Kabbalah system. Either they presume that you know Kabbalah already, or else they teach that separately. However, the Kabbalah system directions are no secret now, and I have given a great deal of it in my books. When you read these things, you should be able to fill in some of those spaces and make many connections. Yeah, that's the other thing too, is that the oaths being one thing, but then another thing is that you really did have to have a pretty decent knowledge of, especially like Kabbalah, but also just like Hermetics, uh, in order to kind of understand even what's being said. So the blinds being one thing, and then the fact that it also just takes like when I go back and reread books that I read when I was like first coming into studying and practicing magic, I'm like, it's definitely astounding to me to be like how much, just like how much of it went over my head versus how much now I actually can grasp. And even still, I'm sure that'll change with as even more time goes. So that's why one thing I've said before and I'll say again is to be patient with yourself. Don't be in such a rush to try to be you know some high level grand sorcerer or witch or whatever the heck you want to be. um get like allow yourself the time to be a beginner, to be a fool. It's part of the, it's right there in the tarot, it's right there mapped to the tree of life, okie dokie. Also then, I suppose that much of the stuff that is More or less common knowledge nowadays was very hush hush in those days and even considered wicked, as it were. So maybe Levi had to be careful. So be that as it may, here is what he said about the astral light. You can get his book, The History of Magic, anywhere. Why don't you get it and research it for yourself? Maybe you'll cut it better than I did. Welcome in if you're just coming in. Good to see you. All right, welcome in. There is a composite agent. One name for the magical agent is prana, which prana is composed of the five elemental forces in one. Also, the magical agent, no matter under what name, is a composite as it does consist of five separate different forces. See the art and practice of the occult for more knowledge on this. That's the other Ophiel book I read on this channel. You can go check out the art and practice of the occult. Learn this very vital information. At once, hold on, I'm going to do that without his. Oh, never mind. At once corporeal and spiritual, corporeal in the limited sense of merely having a form like body, and on an inner plane, and spiritual in the sense of spirit. Greek word pneumos, air, movement in motility, ability to self move, hence life, alive. The common receptacle for vibrations of movement and images of form, a fluid, the astral light flows like water, and a force which may be called, in a sense at least, the imagination of nature. By the mediation of this force, every nervous apparatus is in secret communication together. Mediation, dictionary definition: intervention between conflicting parties to promote reconciliation, settlement, or compromise. Hence comes sympathy and antipathy, hence dreams. See the dream method of astral projection in my book, The Art and Practice of Astral Projection. Hence the phenomena of second sight and extranatural vision. This universal agent of nature's works is the ode of the Jews and of Reichenbach, the astral light of the Martinists. The existence and possible employment of this force constitute the great secret of practical magic. The astral light warms, illuminates, magnetizes, attracts, repels, vivifies, destroys, coagulates, separates, breaks, and conjoins everything under the impetus of powerful wills. This statement is somewhat in the nature of a blind to throw off the track of those who would use these truths for pressure purposes, to accomplish devious ends, personal ends, by willing the magical agent to perform designated work slash jobs. Ophiel has found that the astral light magical agent will not respond to strong human willpower, but rather to another entirely different kind of willpower, a more gentle desire willpower. Here, Eliphas Levi goes to all this trouble to hide something, and I spill it out. God, as should be much more properly known as the first cause, created it, the astral light, on the first day when he said, "Let there be light." Bam, 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 bam. There it is, huh? That's that horn shaker. That is a very good description of the astral light. I will now follow up this basic description of the astral light with a few descriptions of my own experience of the astral light, but they will not be as common as Eliphas Levi's. The astral light in action and to inner sight appearance is very much like water. That is, when it is near to this earth plane, it is like water. When it is farther away from the earth plane, it becomes something else. I will repeat for emphasis. The astral light is like Water, when it is near to this Earth's material plane, it flows like water. It floods like water. It has currents like water. It has tides. It wets. It soaks. It forms whirlpools. It penetrates all things. The astrolight is plastic and can be molded into any form or shape. The astrolight penetrates all solid things. The astrolight responds to directed thoughts and can be directed to do certain things, but not to strong wills. The astrolight can be talked to. The astrolight can be persuaded after a fashion. At the risk of being repetitious, I want to say again that the astrolight close in is similar to water. Close in is similar to water. Farther out, the astrolight thins out into a blinding white flash. However, before the stage of the blinding white flash, many colors can appear. That is, there is an intermediate stage where the light turns into colors. These colors represent the different forces. Each force has a different color. And this color scheme goes through just about all physical existence. There is a tremendous amount of occult knowledge in the above few sentences, and I have given as much to you as I can in the space here in this book. Please ponder on this. You can't meditate on this enough. I will explain a little more about the nature of the astral light. I have very good reason to believe that the astral light is composed of all the elemental forces merged into one thing. In many other kinds of teaching, occult teachings, there is a constant reference to something called prana. I am thoroughly well convinced that this prana is another name for the astral light. How many of y'all like to do pranayama breathing? If you've never tried it, I can certainly not recommend it enough. Definitely do pranayama breathing. Okay. I'll explain a little more about this. You see, as you penetrate the inner planes and come in contact with them yourself, they are all flooded with light. But as I said before, this light varies in, let us say, intensity and density, and varies, like I said, according to the distance. The source of the light you are examining at that moment is away from the material earth plane. I therefore surmise from studying the statements of many different teachers, including Eliphas Levi, that these different teachers entered the inner planes at different levels and they saw the astral light in its different phases or densities. Oh, wait, this is sounding a lot like what we've been reading in Cosmic Doctrine over with our dear buddy Travis. And then, of course, all these different people gave different names to the same thing that they cognized at different levels. I believe this word prana comes from Oriental sources, which means Eastern. I don't know. I guess that's a bad thing to say now. I don't know, man. I don't care about what all you guys think is good or bad. Not you guys here who are paying attention. You know what I mean? The what's trap the popcorn gallery. Yeah, whatever. Oriental is just used to mean Eastern, and Occidental was the word they used for Western. So we can just call it. The word prana comes from Eastern sources, while in my opinion, the Eastern religions and practices are of not much value to Westerners like ourselves. Occasionally, certain individuals and certain branches of Oriental studies, I hesitated. See, oh man, you guys thought you had me. No, have been a little more practical than others. And they have given names to this one thing that everyone is investigating. Realizing as they did that there were many different phases or forms of the astral light, depending upon where it was, They just called the whole astral light manifestation in all its phases prana. And it seems to me that this is quite sensible because this prana has attributed to it all the other characteristics that Levi has named and a few other additional ones that I'm going to name or have named. I am sorry if I seem to be getting off the path of talismans, but I am not really because basically, and I may repeat this again, okay, man, come on, YouTube. Jeez, technical difficulties. Apparently, I got to go adjust my settings. Yeah, okay, good. The audio's working good, that's for sure. Man, apparently I got to go adjust my settings. That boy done interrupted me and said something about uh, are you have you had too much screen time, dude? What am I? No, I'm not a child. Although I do like to put the settings. In fact, you might find that beneficial if you find yourself always on your Instagram or something. Go in those settings and make it yell at you if you're on there for more than like 15 minutes. Thank you, Dub. Appreciate you, man. Goodness, that was annoying, dude. Oh well, all right. So now I know for future reference, and we ain't gonna let it slow us down. I'm gonna just start that paragraph over though. I believe this word prana comes from Oriental sources. Thank you. While, in my opinion, the Oriental religions and practices are of not much value to Westerners like ourselves, occasionally certain individuals and certain branches of Oriental studies have been a little more practical than others, and they have given names to this one thing that everybody is investigating, realizing, as they did, that there were many different phases or forms of the astral light depending upon where it was. They just called the whole astral light manifestation in all its phases prana. And it seems to me that this is quite sensible because this prana has attributed to it all the other characteristics that Levi has named and a few other additional ones that I am going to name or have named. I am sorry if I seem to be getting off the path of talismans, but I am not really, because basically, and I may repeat this again, and if I do, don't be bored with it. Just read it over again calmly until you are sure you understand it. All work done on talismans is directly connected with the astral light. In fact, you might say that making a talisman, working with talismans, studying the ideas of talismans is one of the most practical applications you can make slash do in regard to understanding the nature of the inner planes and the nature of your occult studies. In order to understand and use these inner planes and their forces to help you live your physical life better. So yeah, if you get bored with him repeating stuff, just remember that anytime these authors are repeating something, it's probably because it's something you really need to get drilled in. The inner planes are full of the astral light, and it might indeed be said that the inner planes consist solely of the astral light. And also, it could be said that the material earth plane is condensed, hardened astral light. But I am not prepared at this time to show how the transition is made from inner light to material earth. The only hint I have to work on is that the transition has some connections with the five senses and you. It may seem as if we are getting away from the subject of talismans, but we are not. What use is it to tell you how to make a talisman and not what the power is behind it, why the talisman should work and can work? And this is why Ophiel's instructions are valid, while others just blab, unglittering, unworkable generalities. Sheesh, Ophiel. I think I had better give more information about the nature of the astral light. As the more you know about its nature and its power, the better you should be able to use it in making talismans, and also use it in of your life slash living on this outwardly, but should not be difficult physical plane. I would like to call your attention to the fact that many successful people, that is, materially successful people, have succeeded because they were able to set up currents in the inner plane astral light, and those currents tend to bring to them large measures of the things they ask for or demand, if you like the word better. I want to call your attention to the fact that this successful current setting is often done unconsciously and in complete ignorance of any interplane connections, whatever. This hardly seems fair in view of the fact that many worthy persons and many occult students do not seem to be able to make the astral light work for them at all. I call this to your attention here, but I cannot go deeply into it. I have covered this subject in my other books and Vignets or Vignets. I'm not sure how you say that. All I can say here is that your basic desires are deeply influenced by your attitudes. Your attitudes may be your own or put on you by other people. If your attitudes are wrong or weak, then your influence on the astrolite will be wrong and weak, and hence, in a word, unsuccessful, or you will lead an unsuccessful life. I do not mean to hustle you to buy my other books, but I put down the best occult knowledge I have available for your benefit, the only way I know how to do. To proceed, when you create a talisman for a certain purpose, what you are doing fundamentally is attaching a piece of the astral light to the talismanic object and causing a current of the astral light to flow toward the talismanic object. And as you are wearing or possessing the talisman, from the talismanic object into your aura, which will strongly incline circumstances, desired circumstances to come about, dreams to come true, and you have your life the way you'd like it to be. There is one more subject I think I had better introduce at this point. I don't really know very much about God, but I can also say that I don't think that anyone else knows very much about God. There is just a lot of talking and screaming and yelling and fighting and killing and murdering over the nature and idea of God as you would want to find in the history of the world. And I don't want to be connected with that. I don't mean to say anything to upset you. If you have strong convictions about certain ideas about God, then stick to them. I'm only talking this way in order to try to explain something about the inner nature of things. You recall that previously I gave in other books and writings some material about the demimonde, a half world of which this physical plane is only one half, and the inner plane is the other half. This, of course, is a theory, and I also explained about theories. You just use them for the time being until you find more truth, and then you use that as a theory, and so on and so on. I merely advance the idea here, and I don't insist upon anything. Especially, I don't insist that you believe anything I say just because I say it. For heaven's sake, don't do that. I advance the idea for meditation and contemplation. I advance this idea that prana may be the agent of God in the demimonde. I don't remember him saying anything about a demimonde, and this is like the last book of his to read. I've read all his other books. I don't remember him saying anything about it. Maybe it was in his Vignets. I do remember him talking about the planes and all that, but I don't remember him using that word until now. There is some slight evidence. He probably did, he probably did in the other book I read, of the art and practice of the occult, and I'm just brain farting. But you know what? I've read so many books the last handful of years, that it's just, And you retain on what's the percent you retain, like, I don't know, it's not a very big percentage of the stuff you read. So that's why we reread and or make notes, lock it in, you know. Okay. There is some slight evidence also that a thing called logos, the word, coexists with prana, and it might be the representative of God in this outer world, whereas God on the inner planes is a quite different thing. However, there is too great a mystery there, and probably never in the history of the world will it be solved. We can learn a few things that we can apparently get some results from, and so that is about all we can do. And if you do this for now, the chances are great that sources of inspiration will open up to you and you will acquire more knowledge as you continue working. I want to call your attention to the fact that apparently many successful people in this world, that is, those who are materially successful, have succeeded in getting currents set up in the nearby etheric plane, etheric astral plane, if you want to call it that. And these currents bring to them large measures of things that they ask for, or it could be said that they will for, or that they send out strong desire patterns for any other kind of idea that appeals to them. And of course, in setting up a talisman, that is what you are doing basically. You are starting up a current centering upon this talisman, which current comes from various points on the other side. Try to visualize it coming from all sources. And these currents flow towards the talisman that you made. They then apparently come through the talisman, as if the talisman was a kind of door, and enter into this plane in some form, probably in a magnetic form. Remember at this point how I said in the beginning, in the original definition of a talisman, that it was something paid for. Now it is a little bit clearer that the form of payment could be the work, the desire, the concentration, and all the other things in connection with desire and what you want when you make the talisman in the way you pay for the talisman. Hmm. Imagine that. It's about the energy, it's about the work you put into it. That's why no matter how much you might want to buy um, your initiations or your advancements, your enlightenment, you just can't. So please don't waste your money on anybody who's offering to sell you, I don't know, to some high level and all of that. Because that ain't how it works. Same as you can't go to the gym and pay like the buffest, most ripped person in there to give you their body and their strength. It's just not how it works. The astrological configurations might or might not be favorable to your project, so remember to try to follow up the ideas of making your talisman under favorable astrological times. At least make them during the day and the hour of the astrological force that is connected with the nature of the desires that you are making the talisman to fill. That's information is easy to find out. Just so you know, you can go search. There's websites where you can find not only the days are pretty obvious. There's 7 days in the week connected to the seven traditional planets. That's pretty easy to figure out and remember. But then there's also planetary hours. And then the moon will go through the different phases too, whether the different signs and the signs being connected to planets, etc. But you can just easily go online and type in like planetary hour calculator, and there's at least a few websites that will tell you what planetary time it is. Here, I got a tab open right now. Let's see, what planetary time is it right now? 11:11. Oh no, it's 11:15. I just couldn't read it. But right now it is in the sun. Right now we are in the hour of the sun. So, say you want to make a talisman for the benefits that you would get from solar types of energy. Well, you'd want to do it now, but on a Sunday. Does that make sense? Okay. Most people set up these currents even without the aid of talismans, you understand, and have these good things, the things they want, flowing to them, and then something happens. They change their mind, or they become unhappy, or other people influence them too much, or even other people's envies and jealousies might affect them. So you have to be on the lookout for all this sort of thing. I am going to repeat a little bit. An intense desire is an astral light moving force. Now, wishful thinking is not an intense desire. I can't explain all the exact ramifications about the difference between desire and wishful thinking. You will have to meditate upon that and learn something about that yourself. But there is a tremendous difference between intense desire and wishful thinking. Then again, I have noticed that mere concentration without an exact, definite object is of no value whatsoever either. It seems to me now, when I think back on my life, that all the times that I really wanted something, I felt the wanting deep in the pit of my stomach. As you know, the pit of the stomach is connected with one of the chakras. The stomach chakra is the Jupiter chakra. Do some research on this in connection with my book, The Art and Practice of the Occult, about the Jupiter forces and what they consist of. You'll find it all in there. There are only a few books that have some information about talismans in them, and I will list them at the end of the book. Believe me, there aren't very many. They have been mostly put out by sort of fly by night publishers. Cough, I'm not gonna, never mind, I'm not gonna say it. That are sort of dealing with voodoo and the underworld of the occult, as you might say. I will also list other books you may want to read for a good occult background. I'm not going to say it because they do publish. Well, let's just say there's a popular publishing house out there that puts out a lot of trash, but they do put out some good things. They for all the trash they put out some valuable stuff. And so I'd rather not rub them the wrong way in case I want to read one of those valuable books. You feel me? Most of all this occult that we have today that has come down to us from one or two sources came to us through England, France, Italy, and from Italy to Spain. It appears that before the time of printing, these things were taught by word of mouth or from master to pupil and didn't have much to do with writing except what was copied out by hand. I have some reason to believe that the bourgeois, I think bourgeois, maybe it's supposed to be bourgeois in Italy had these books translated and written out, and they did some work and practices of the material therein, which is the upper class, if that's what it's supposed to be, but it's usually spelled different than that. Whether they accomplished anything by it or not, I don't know. I have a feeling that I'm going to find a lot of material about magic and sorcery and witchcraft and other things in the early Italian Renaissance. And even before that, but there must have been something going on there, and it is just out of the average run of people's interest. And so I don't know about it. If you know about it, then write me and tell me about it. There is that old gag that has been running around for hundreds of years, which says, where there is smoke, there is fire. And it just seems to me that where there is so much stuff coming, as it were, to the surface and then sort of disappearing when you look for something else in there, well, there was just something there and it must be recorded. Before I go any farther, I will again remind you that everything I teach and what appears to be the real source of magic and metaphysical mind magic and all these other things is found and explained in the system of the Kabbalah. Learn the basic Kabbalah thoroughly, as much as I give you, and if you can find any place else to get it, any place else, get it there too. Learn the basic Kabbalah, and you've got it all. I recall that in the novel called The Black Rose, which of course is the clove, I don't recall who the author was now, but it was made into a moving picture. When a telescope was shown to the man, the Englishmen that had made the trip there to China to gain knowledge, when this crude tube telescope was shown to him and he saw what it did, he looked on the outside to see if there were any Kabbalistic signs on the outside of the telescope. Of course, there were none in this case, I mean. The Kabbalistic signs that he was referring to, and to all the signs, drawings, diagrams, marks, legends, and anything whatsoever that was put on talismans are the following. They are first the elemental sign symbols, that is, the square, the circle, the half moon, and the triangle, and also the planetary symbols. Remember when we drew those from his other book, Art and Practice of the Occult? They are also the 12 astrological symbols or signs. There are also some Hebrew letters and a few other symbols consisting of straight lines with dots. I have a strong feeling that many of these other symbols, marks, and things that I just mentioned are put there as a sort of a blind. In fact, there is much in the symbol presentation by these books that we do not have, that is left out, or additions were made there to confuse the person who wasn't really entitled to the information. Actually, to make a successful talisman, you need very little more than those basic signs I told you about. There is a system of divination called geomancy, or divination by earth. There is a set of symbols connected with that system. These symbols can be placed upon the talisman somewhere if you want to. However, they are basically astrological symbols, or planetary symbols, or elemental force symbols, just in another form. In your study and later manufacture of talismans, you are just going to use the above symbols referred to. This is all you really need. Also, for your first work, you are going to make your real talisman on parchment. Although the books do call for these talismans to be made on metals and to be made of the metal of the nature of the planetary force that you are invoking, of the nature of the matter which you are invoking for. It may be that if you become real expert in this art, you may care to take up the engraving of these metals. I have not used these metals myself, and I think for the average result to be obtained, making the talismans on pure or clean parchment is sufficient. Although, at first, you are going to make many talismans on paper until you get the hang of it. The final talisman should be made on parchment. Nowadays, people's minds are more trained along metaphysical lines, and I have strong reason to believe that this metal business and many of the other things that were used in the Middle Ages were used because the people's minds were not trained and they simply had to be. That is, their minds had to be beaten into it with real outstanding hard symbols. Again, I want to repeat what I have said elsewhere, that very often it is in the work and in the planning of the making of the talisman that the basic work is done. Actually, the talisman itself is more like an anticlimax. The work really seems to be done when you are doing all this thinking and planning about it over a period of time. Now, It will be necessary for you to learn the astrological symbols, the elemental force symbols, and the planetary symbols. Directions are given later in this book for you to make these symbols, and you should draw them carefully and properly. Now, do the best you can on it, but still, if it isn't so wonderfully perfect, remember that it is you after all, and that is what counts. I cannot make a talisman for you, and you cannot make a talisman for me. So, even if your work is not a thing of artistic beauty, remember that it is the basic thinking that goes on in your mind, as it were, that is the real value in the making of the talisman. That is the work that connects you with the astral light currents that do the work to make the talisman efficacious. All right. So now we've gotten through that chapter on talismans and the astral light. This next one's short, so I'm probably going to do this one too. We'll see how we go from after there. But what he's saying there is definitely important because, like, I have a friend who he likes to do that thing that I already said about. He likes to try to pay for just all his wizard stuff, but all these thousands of dollars later, and it's like, dude, you haven't accomplished anything. You know what I mean? Other than spent a bunch of money. And one of the times he was even wanting me to make a talisman for him. And I mean, I would have done it out of the kindness of my heart, but he's like, I'll pay you, man. But I was like, why don't you just come over and I will show you how to do it? Because it's just not going to be the same. Like, it's going to be way more potent, way more effective for you to make it yourself. And also that gives us just a chance to be, hang out and be buddies, because we don't really get to hang out and see each other. I don't know why nobody likes to hang out anymore. That's all right. I mostly don't either. I kind of just like to keep to myself. But sometimes I do like to hang out, and that would be an awesome way to hang out with a friend. Right here, dude, I'll show you how to make this talisman. But whatever, you know. I'm sure he found somebody online who made a sick sigil and put it in a talisman, and he's still having the same problems as before. Love you, homie. Make your own talismans. Do your own magic. Speaking of which, from another angle. So this will be chapter 3. For some time, I have been in contact with a character. I have not been able to penetrate very far into the nature of this contact or the nature of the person at the other end of it. I have no name, no address, nothing. Excuse me. Whenever he feels like it, he contacts me and has a little discussion with me, which is about all I can expect. I don't think that he is a master from outside the planets anywhere, but he does every now and then give a sort of a burst of knowledge, which is very interesting and comprehensive, and I am going to pass it on with probably an increasing frequency if he calls me. If for no other reason than that he states these things in a slightly different manner, and in this slightly different manner, it tends to illuminate the material a little bit more. The airplane physical universe is full of light. Now, you see, for example, this is exactly what I said before myself, but the following is just slightly different. The astral light. I'm going to read that without his little. The airplane physical universe is full of light. The astral light. In and through this light, forms of this light move, live, and countless types of beings and forces. These beings and forces can be attracted, and captured by various devices, one of which is called a talisman. These devices are located on this physical plane, and from this plane, they reach out into the inner planes and provide a path slash connection on down from them until grounded onto this plane. Each of these forces and the beings connected with them have to do some particular space energy connected with some particular facet of human life slash living, and its attentions can be gained and the energy of its particular force concentrated by you. We all do much of this contacting anyhow, every day, every hour, every minute, without knowing we are doing it. We have developed words and phrases, even prayers, to help ourselves connect with these inner powers. Our thoughts are powerful talismans, especially when kept in a cheerful, constructive line. That one, read that one again. Our thoughts are powerful talismans, especially when kept in a cheerful, constructive line. Cheerful, optimistic thoughts are our best talismans. In fact, the object of creating and using a talisman is to strengthen and uplift your thoughts slash thinking and to revive your imagination so it truly pictures what you want to achieve or receive from these inner powers and brought through into your physical plane sphere. In the old occult days, much was made of the knowledge or belief that if a talisman was made properly, it contacted an actual god or a subdivision thereof. And this god did the necessary desired work the talisman was created for without having to be told every little thing to do. This desired action is basically due to the sticky threads of astral matter. All these things are connected together, especially from this physical plane on in. The desire slash impulse travels from you to the inner place where the prototype energies of your desires are stored. And contact once made, the desire fulfillment forces flow back down to your environment and tend to create and reinforce, create to bring about the exact set of physical conditions which will cause the desire to come to you, the desired physical circumstances you made and invoked the talisman for. Just what are the above mentioned forces and why are they able to do the described work? Most all this information was given in previous books and lessons. It is now necessary to repeat much of it, even though you may have covered it before. If you have covered this material before, then the new talisman application will be easy for you. If you have not covered this before, then after you read this book, you should get the previous books and read them as they were written for your benefit and development. And there are many applications for them to express themselves. All of the basic occult is the same. Basic. It is the application of this basic occult to the different facets of human physical existence that is different. And so, although you may have heard this basic occult before, act as if you hadn't. Do it all over again. But watch for the new and different applications to whatever branch of the occult you are studying or using it for. That's a I'll say something real quick, and that's a big trick, but you'll find to be very helpful. Is trying your very hardest to act like you haven't heard it, because what we'll do, our minds will do, and it's probably also function of that old tricky ego, is that if we already know somebody's telling us something we already know, we tend to kind of tune it out, like yeah, 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 that whole thing. So always acting, and this goes into the to enter the kingdom of heaven, you must be like a child, always trying to approach everything like it's brand new. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I've never heard that. Wow, that's crazy. Wow, I definitely didn't know that, oh, whatever, but I never heard that before, even if you've heard it countless times. It's a trick, it's a practice you will benefit from if you can discipline yourself to do it. Okay. Let's see. I was like down here, I think somewhere. I'm gonna go right here. Do it all over again, but watch for the new and different applications to whatever branch of the occult you are studying or using it for. Now, you are watching and determining the differences and the applications of this basic occult is where you become a magician and where you learn the art of magic because that is all magic ever was or ever will be. The application of the basic occult to the million different facets of human existence. Each time the application is just different enough so that it varies from the previous. And when you once know this and firmly grasp this idea, you are well on your way to becoming a power in the physical plane because you then know how to attract and use the basic occult. And what is the basic occult? It is only the five elemental forces. These forces, as you know, for which no good English name exists. Akasha, or spirit, air, fire, water, and earth. So now I trust you see that your occult knowledge requirements are extremely simple on the one hand, and yet they are extremely complex on the other. You will never reach the end of the complexities. You can acquire the knowledge easily, but you will never reach an end to the application of the knowledge. We are now entering upon a second phase of these studies about talismans. The secondary period will consist of some knowledge and descriptions of the elemental forces, in more detail than I have put into other books. Talismans consist basically of the five elemental forces. Again, I have to stop and say, and I cannot find any way to get around this, as it seems to be one of the basic facts of the occult that the fifth elemental force is not used much in making talismans. In fact, I know of practically none. The elemental force of Akasha is always in the back of my mind, and you must always keep it in the back of your mind, as it is the basic of all the elemental forces, even though I have said this again and again. It is the basic substance from which all the other substances are made and come from. Basically, then, all talismans that you will create to bring about your desires, and I may have to repeat this again and again, will consist mainly of the four elemental forces, which are air, fire, water, and earth. Look up the meaning of the word invoked. The end basic effect should be to produce the good feeling. The correct feeling, which should greatly assist the depression. And this person is you, of course, of whom I am speaking to accomplish the job you want to accomplish and for which you are creating the talisman to assist you. Now, here enters a very important point which must be understood and correctly acted upon, or all your talisman work will come to naught. To illustrate it, I am going to retell a little fable which came originally from Greek mythology and was written down by that Roman slave, Aesop. A man was driving this car along a road and it became stuck in a mud hole. Seemingly, the man could not get out and he began to call upon Jupiter to help, crying with a loud voice. Luckily, Jupiter answered him and said, "You nut! Get up, shout at them, put your own shoulder to the wheel, and push. The gods will help those who help themselves." The man did this, and he got out of the mud hole and on his way. Now, basically, this is what the talisman does it places a channel for the force to reach through to us, but we must first we must make the final physical effort onto this final physical plane. The force can push through, and using the physical effort as a channel, we do the work. We can then do the work. So there you have it. Nothing alone can work. The force that the talisman invokes, that you invoke through the talisman, cannot work unless you make a physical effort. And that's true of all magic. I don't care if you're doing sigils, I don't care if you're doing candle magic, spells out of a whatever spell book. I don't care. If you do a mantra yoga, I don't care. You have to still put in the actual mundane efforts to make it happen. One thing, one little funny thing I thought recently, a lot of people think that magic works in this Harry Potter way, like you just cast a spell, whatever. But even in Harry Potter, they didn't have a money spell. None of them were casting a money spell. They were rolling off of Harry's trust fund. Remember that? For those of you who watched that growing up or read it. Other than that, they would have been broke. Okay. The force that the talisman invokes, that you invoke through the talisman, cannot work unless you make a physical effort. The physical plane is just as important as the force that comes through from the inner planes. They are really equal. There is a great tendency to regard the physical plane as a burden, as inferior, and as something to escape from. But that is a pack of lies. The physical plane is just as important as the inner planes, and is the final result of them all. So there you have it. And that is the truth. There is no other truth. Oh, come on. If you hear something different than this and it proves out to be true, then let me know and I'll change my ideas if I find that it is true. You should now begin to understand from the above how talismans work. You must also remember that the Jupiter god which answered the man's call was a force, as taught in my book, The Art and Practice of the Occult. And the force, this Jupiter force, was a combination force, water of fire. The symbol is a large red triangle with a white half moon on it in the middle. The triangle being the symbol of fire, and the half moon being the symbol of water. All right, so there we have it with chapter 3. I am tempted to go one more because I know that these next few weren't way too long. And this one, elemental forces. Yeah, we better just do it. But then I'm going to have to call it because here in just over an hour, like I said, I have an Illuminati meeting. And so you can't be late for those. Oh, no, I'm not trying to get kicked out of the Illuminati. Okay. The elemental forces, chapter 4. Pretty sure it was chapter 4. Yeah, it's chapter 4. Hey, hey, hey. Okay. In my books, I have spoken again and again about the 5 elemental forces. The reason I have harped on this so much is that the 5 elemental forces are all there is. That is, the 5 elemental forces are all there is to the physical world. Physical world meaning everything this side of Kether. Oh. Yeah, but you can't forget the 3 gunas as well. That is, the 5 elemental forces and their combinations constitute the physical world. This being so, you can easily perceive that any talisman you make will have to have some connection with the elemental forces in one way or another, and in accord with the subject dealt with or governed by the talisman, or what subject the talisman was made for, or for what purpose the talisman was supposed to correct, etc. Please note, I'm aware that some of this material has been mentioned before in my other books and papers, and even in this book. I swear to you that these fundamentals, I repeat, are the basic all. You cannot overlearn them. I have before me a catalog of lectures being given here in California, and as I look over the subjects and titles, I notice they are all about the effects of the elemental forces in many different ways. Here is one: let universal energies work for you. Solar Light Center. Welcome in for those of you just coming in. Great to have you here. Okay. The Golden Key by my friend. White Magic Workshop. Adventures in Awareness, also by my friend. Psychic Awareness, and so on. All these things are but other names for the effects of the combinations of the five elemental forces, and there is nothing else. I swear. So learn these five elemental forces here and now and their connection with talismans in this book. And you have made a great step forward to illumination and mastery. Go ahead, read and learn each slightly different presentation of knowledge about the five elemental forces, no matter what order it comes in. To resume, you will look in vain elsewhere for any basic ideas as to the fundamental reasons for talismans being constructed the way they are, or for the reasons behind it all. I really think that other teachers discovered the effects and found they could manipulate them and stop there. But in this book, you are on the correct track to real knowledge. Thank goodness. If this is the first of my books you have read, then you will have to acquire drawing and painting materials and learn to do some simple drawing and coloring. If this is not the first of my books you have read, then you probably have done some work like this before and have accumulated your drawing and painting materials. If you have read my other books, then you know about the five elemental forces, and I trust you have made the symbols already. Heck yeah, we have. Oh yeah. Well, unless you're just coming into this, then welcome in. Have fun drawing them. It's a really fun little project to do. In fact, you have probably made them several times if you have read several books. However, even if you have, still do it again. You can overlearn. Yeah, I'll add to that. Draw if you haven't ever actually drawn and like labeled out the Kabbalistic tree of life, definitely do that. Definitely do that. And color it in, probably in the Kingdom of Bria color scales first, or Bria, and then go from there. Okie dokie. If you are reading one of my books for the first time, then please learn the following knowledge, which is, as I said, the solid basic knowledge of the whole physical creation, and which you will use in making talismans and in all your other occult, magical, metaphysical work. There are five elemental forces: Akasha, air, fire, water, and earth. These names, Akasha, also called ether or spirit, air, fire, water, and earth, are the ordinary common names of these elemental forces. To repeat for emphasis, the names Akasha, air, fire, water, and earth are the ordinary names given for the purpose of concealing the inner meanings of these names of the elemental forces. This double naming, double talk comes down to us from the medieval age, when it was necessary to hide and conceal magical works from the sweet, loving, gentle Church of Jesus, which he's talking about the Inquisition, which would burn alive anyone suspected of having a mind of his own, or anyone who wanted to study what he pleased, freely, minding his own business. What a time. The true full names of these forces were, leaving Akasha for later, as it is different, the elemental force of elemental air, the elemental force of elemental fire, the elemental force of elemental water, the elemental force of elemental earth. As you can see from these longer names, there is more to these forces than just ordinary physical air, fire, water, earth, and ether. The work elemental before air, I don't know if that was supposed to be a word, but I'm going to read it how he wrote it. The work elemental before air, fire, water, and earth means the principle of, and not the air, fire, water, earth themselves. They are not even elements in the scientific sense of today. Shout out to Minosis, man. Stand on principle, baby. We're learning about those elemental principles right now. Much love to you, fam. Okay. In the occult, we are concerned with the principles of things and not the physical things themselves. I'm going to read that again. In the occult, we are concerned with the principles of things and not the physical things themselves. This idea goes all through the occult, so always look for it in all occult things. The word principle means first or primary, which also means first. For the purpose of making talismans, you will have to deal with first principles. You will embody the symbol of an elemental force in and on your talisman somewhere, probably in the basic design or layout. If you will study the designs of talismans as given in the Lesser Key of Solomon, you will find examples of the following symbols. But remember, they are not to be copied for your use. They are no good, being worthlessly laid out on purpose. The original teachings were added to by vocal teachings, which explained all that was missing. But those people are long gone now, so I'll try to fill you in. So, starting with air, I'll be simple in names. We will examine the elemental forces each in turn. Air means fundamentally movement, movability, ability to move. Generally, what moves by itself is alive. So, air self movement has usually meant life. What you are to understand by air is ability to move. In your future, to be made talismans, you will, in almost all cases, want the talisman to relate to some moving thing, surely, for something to move toward you. Therefore, the desired movement should be symbolized by a circle, and it should be somewhere in the talisman. Does this seem reasonable? You should construct these talismans just as you construct a machine to do a job. Your talisman's machine parts are the symbols of what you want the talisman to be or do. Dude, this book's fire. I like this book. Sorry it took us so long, you guys. Been a busy year. Oh boy, has it been a busy year. I hope you all found many blessings within 2025. Okay. You should draw and paint a symbol of the elemental force of air, basically a circle. I suggest that this air symbol and the others to follow be drawn on a 4x4 piece of what is called artboard, which should be available in any sort. Heck yeah, Dub. Glad to hear it. Okay. Sorry to because man, I gotta remember to not do that. Cut off mid-sentence. I'm just stuck paragraph. It's over. I suggest that this air symbol and the others to follow be drawn on a 4x4 piece of what is called artboard, which should be available in any art supply shop. Generally, such a shop has a large paper cutter and should allow you to cut a sheet down to 4x4 pieces. You can find the sample sizes of these symbols on the front and back inside of my books. Take off the measurements and use those sizes. Run a border around the edge of the card just for these samples. Make this, actually, hang on one sec. I'm gonna try something, dude. I'm gonna, because I know how you can like bring up the chats or whatever. So I'm gonna see if I can't do that real quick. Make it show up there to the three of you. Well, one of those is me because I'm watching the stream in the chat over here. So to the two of you hanging out with me, much love. Thank you. Okay. Jay Balvale is live. Nice. Whoa, I got 2 new subscribers. Sick. Thanks, you guys. Okay, let's see. So if I click you, does it let me? Nope. Well, I'll figure it out at another time. I'm not going to waste time with that. I was just trying to check real quick. Okay, so make the circle at first with the pencil compass and then ink the outline. Then paint the symbol according to directed colors. In this case, the circle is positive blue and the background is the negative complementary color of blue, which is orange. When this positive air symbol is done, you should make a negative air symbol in which the colors are reversed. The circle is the negative orange and the background is the positive blue. This is used when you want to remove something from you instead of bringing something to you. Let's read that again. The circle is the negative orange and the background is the positive blue. This is used when you want to remove something from you instead of bringing something to you. So I showed it in the first live of this book how from his previous book he had us draw those elemental symbols, those tatwas, and he instructed you to do both. So there you go, there you have it. And the reason for the well, there's more than one reason for doing the flashing colors. I was trying to think of what it's called, flashing colors. One of them is a meditative, like slash scrying technique, but then the other is that right there. I didn't even know that till now. That's sick. Okay, please study the following table of colors and their complements. White, complementary to black and or gray. Red, complementary to green. Blue, complementary to orange. Yellow, complementary to violet. Olive, complementary to red orange. Blue green, complementary to russet. Violet, light violet, complementary to citrine. Reddish orange, complementary to green blue. Deep amber, complementary to indigo. Lemon yellow, complementary to red violet. Yellow green, complementary to crimson. WT says, nah, thank you. Perfect timing. Thanks, fam. Appreciate that, man. Okay, so anybody who did some art classes and you probably learned a lot of that already. That's like one of the basic things you'll learn in your art classes is complementary colors. Shoot, they even teach that in the church, don't they? Because they teach you the primary colors. And okay, all right, I think we should be back. Come on, baby. Come on, baby. There we go. Right? Okay, nice. Gosh, it did it to me again. Yeah, I'm gonna definitely go in and adjust those settings before we stream this again. Sorry about those interruptions. Thank you for rocking with me still. All right. You know what's funny? That from that, what was it? It's that country buffet or whatever. Wait, all right. There's a dude at the Arby's right by my house who he does that. It's just like he just does that. I don't think that I mean maybe it's because he's seen the thing, but not like you go in there to order or whatever. You know you talk about let me get my roast beef. All right. Do you want curly fries with that? A milkshake? All right. Okay, we got to finish this up. This table contains the spectrum colors and their complementaries. However, in actual practice, this will vary again according to the manufacturer's variations of colors and other things affecting them. So you will still have to find the real complementary colors. I'm assuming he's saying that because of like depending on what art set you buy, and so he's probably going off like those color scales for like the Kabbalah that come from the Golden Dawn, if I'm not mistaken, are because I want to say it was because McGregor Mather's wife was an artist, and then there was like a main paints and art set at the time, which is it's still available to this day, if I'm not mistaken. So like you can go get that, and it'll have all those actual colors in there, stuff like yeah, like russet and citrine. But I know that sometimes too, if you buy, I don't know, like there's other paint kits that have it, or even I like to color with colored pencil a lot. And so I try to usually buy like a big fatty pack that's got like a couple hundred in there at least. And so that usually will cover most of those colors or at least one close enough to it. Okay. Find the real complementary color by looking at a color for 5 minutes and then look at a piece of white paper. Study the complementary color on the white blank sheet of paper. Determine this color exactly and then reproduce it as accurately as you can with paints. Let this process be your guide. There are many ways of using the talisman after it is made. These ways will come to you as you progress in the use slash study slash application of magic. And until you possess more understanding of the magical basics, it is not much use to burden you with them at this point of your development. The first way you should learn to use the talisman is as follows. Take the talisman, hold it in a good light, and look at it steadily for 5 minutes, but don't strain your eyes. At the end of 5 minutes, look away from the talisman to a sheet of white paper, and you should see the talisman there on the paper in complementary colors or the reverse of the real physical color. And that's something you can also do with like your sigils of Goetia, of the Shem. You stare at that bugger long enough that it basically becomes burned onto your retina. And then, yeah, you can either look at like a blank white wall, or even you can shut your eyes and it should be like it should be there. Okay. The image will fade away and then return. But after doing this exercise for several weeks, you should be able to recall the image to your inner eye at any time in color, especially when you are waking up in the morning and still half asleep. It is in this way that you make the talisman come to life. And that is a very powerful state for doing magical types of operations. You're manifesting and all that is what's known as the hypnagogic or hypnagogic, I'm not sure how it's said, state. So that's kind of that half asleep, half awake state. I'm pretty sure even in the the Bihar books, I want to say it's in Paths of Poverty and Nivriti, when he's giving you that little sadhana outline, he even says for the very first part, especially the mantra before you actually get up and do like the hatha yoga and all that, is don't even get out of bed. I mean, if you really got to get up and use the toilet, I mean, I feel that, but then basically hop right back in and kind of, if you're half asleep, even falling a little bit asleep, that's fine, because then you'll kind of carry it into your sleep. And the mind is the idea is also that the mind is a lot more suggestible in that state. Okay. The next symbol you should make is the symbol of fire. As the principle, first cause of air is movement, ability to move. The first cause slash principle of fire is expansion. Expansion is born of movement. As movement becomes faster and faster, heat is generated, and heat causes expansion. I am speaking as if we were dealing with material things, which in a sense is true. What is below is the same as that which is above. in this case, it is true, but not always. So, expansion, or all allied concepts such as explosion, puffed up, swelling, etc., is the key basic word for fire. In your talismans to be made, you naturally first want the talisman to be able to move to you what you are creating the talisman for. So, as I said, you'll have somewhere in the talisman design a circle to indicate ability to move. And next, you'll add a triangle, fire symbol, to indicate that the talisman has the power to expand, to engulf the things you want the talisman to get for you. Conversely, if you make the other kind of talisman to get rid of things, then you use the fire complementary color to deflate or expel the things you don't want. Make, draw, ink, and po- paint and positive fire symbol, a red triangle on a green background, and the negative fire symbol, a green triangle on a red background. To proceed, the next elemental force symbol is that of water. The keynote basic word for water is contraction. Naturally, in your talisman, you want the forces to 1. Move to get what you want. 2. Expand to engulf what you want when it gets there. 3. Close down on what you want when it has engulfed. Figure out the antecedents of the two pronouns, it, in the above sentence for yourself. Make, draw, ink, and paint the positive water symbol, a white half moon on a black background, and the negative water symbol with the colors reversed. And last but not least at all, we come to the elemental force of earth. The elemental force of earth is the least understood and least appreciated of all the elemental forces. Even among ordinary persons, this earth is called a vale of tears. Oh, oh, ho, 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 wow, well. I'll tell you a little something right now. One of the titles I've heard or read Moloch referred to is the Prince of the Land of Tears. All right, then. It would appear that man is really a spiritual creature and not materially inclined at all. Man works with matter with great reluctance. Man much prefers to work with his mind rather than his hands. Man hates the boundaries that matter puts on him and accepts material sickness with great reluctance, constantly trying to overcome disease. So we're almost done. So I got a little time for a little more digression. I'm also reading on the side, I'm reading Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. And in there, he says something that's blown my mind. I mean, a handful of things, really, but one of them goes right in with that, where he said, man seeks out doctors to prescribe all types of medications, ointments, whatever, to heal his sickness, heal his ailments, because he is so in resistance to the fact that nature prescribed him the sickness in the first place. Yeah, think on that one for a while, huh? And he's basically talking about like that, and that's part of what this whole work is about, right? Is coming more and more into the flow of nature. All right, then. However, an enlightened occultist, such as you are working to be, does work with matter, mostly by entering the inner planes and attempting to alter the course of events on their way down from the higher planes to the physical plane. This is what you are attempting to do by studying the manufacture of talismans. to alter the course of events and get them moving the way you desire. The symbol for the elemental force of elemental earth is an equal sided square. Make and paint this positive earth symbol. The square is painted yellow against a background of violet. The negative symbol is a violet square against a background of yellow, as you can guess. Somewhere in your talisman, you must have a square because you want the things you are making the talisman for to come to you on the earth plane, to ground themselves in your sphere of action. As it was said by Dion Fortune, all magical operations of this type should slash must be grounded in earth. Nice. 1212 on my clock. Page 55, 5 elements. All right then. So sick. Yeah, as much as I do want to continue, I do need to be somewhere in about 45 minutes. And yeah, this one was longer too, more on the astral life. Who I ain't gonna get that. Probably won't get that's about 15 pages. Yeah, I probably won't make that in time at all. So we'll save that for the next session. I mean, I know that not everybody's like up and rocking in the mornings, but see, here's the thing. I'm a morning person. So I think I'm going to just, I don't know, pop in periodically some mornings here and there, especially because my schedule is allowing for it right now. So get this book finished up, finish up Book of Five Rings, and then like I was telling Honey Brown, and I know Trav, I've been saying that I'll do a read of Crowley's Book of the Law. I want to read a couple of his libers because just maybe some of the stuff from Magic and Theory and Practice. I don't know if I'll read the full book front to back, but at least a couple of his instructional books that he would like that were part of like the AA curriculum, because I think we would all benefit from that greatly. But so I think we'll call it there. For those of you rocking with me, thank you so very much. Many blessings to you all. May the week ahead be, well, be whatever nature's intending it to be for you. Quit resisting. And much love to you all. I will see you very soon. And yeah, that's going to be it for today. Bye bye.